first event which took place during COVID, so that was online. The second was in Paris in June of 22, and this is the third event. What we are focusing on is, as the name suggests, greening the Indian financial system. So therefore the acronym is GIFS. What we intend to achieve is essentially twofold. One, create a much higher level of awareness amongst the entire Indian system. When we talk about, the financing system, but we are very open to more than the financing system coming on board. So I think one of the essential takeaways of today's discussion was that the financing system supports the real economy, and therefore the real economy needs to come on board and get the benefit of what we call as the green component of the financing system. So our deliberations went across the entire banking sector, which was represented here. The IBA chief executive, in a sense, symbolically represented the banking system. We had captains from the industry. We had knowledge experts. So the entire gamut of all those people who need to take the Indian economy forward when it comes to progress and development, with full consideration of what is green development. As all of you are well aware, the developing world is looking towards the developed world for a lot of assistance. It is therefore AFD's global interest, and they are now, I think, acknowledged leaders in helping the world set standards and also put those standards into operation. So this obviously is going to happen over quite a period of time. It's not something that will happen overnight. And AFD, of course, has been at it for a while. SIDBI is actually the operating partner in India because we have a mandate to carry this forward across the MSME sector, and which of course is a very vast sector, but it is a sector that could get adversely impacted by the transition to green if we do not act early enough. And of course, Shakti brings in a tremendous amount of knowledge, expertise, domain expertise. So, as I said, it is about the awareness creation, and the second is really about the flow of finance, which is now predicated upon a risk matrix which is more than just a regular risk matrix which a credit organization goes by. To give you a very simple example, if we were to appraise a project which involves generating power with coal, it would end up looking very different from the way it was done 10 years ago. So, we cannot get away from the fact that developing country has a need to develop, and therefore sources of power are not just going to stop. Coal-based power is not just going to stop, but we need to therefore bring in the additional risk due to the adverse effects or the externalities of using coal-based power. So, it's a very simple example just to put it to you. So, today's conference was a great success. The partners, three of us sitting in front of you, and the IBA, we signed a joint declaration, therefore cementing our our enthusiasm, the commitment, the future plan for taking forward the greening of the Indian financial system. So let me hand it over to my two partners here to add in a few words.
Thanks a lot, and thanks to you all. So I'm René Rioux, I'm the CEO of AFD, which is the International Public Development Bank of France. And of course, France. So first of all, it was really a privilege to participate in this event here in Mumbai. Fascinating to see the whole Indian ecosystem in this in-depth dialogue about its transformation to turn to sustainable climate finance, meaning our fellow public development banks here in India, CB, Exim, Natfeed, NABARD were there, but also SBI, I mean the private banking, also many investors, impact investors, and also SEBI, the regulator, and RBI, the central bank, were in the room. And yes, I feel well, in each and every country in the world, you see the climate, the financial system sector becoming more and more aware of the challenges that we are already facing, and we know that there's more to come, and we understand that there's no one silver bullet, and so the solution has to come from the whole system maturing and stepping in and taking responsibility. So many French colleagues participated all year long to this discussion to share with Indian colleagues what is happening in France and in Europe, more broadly speaking, and we are here certainly to invest, but also to listen and to understand how India is doing it, and can inspire, of course, the rest of the world. This is really the spirit of the Paris Agreement. I was one of the negotiators back in 2015, and I can measure the progress made for the last 7 years on this issue. So it's way insufficient yet, but it's only very short time frame, and the discussions we had together today and all year long were totally impossible 7 years ago. So we feel the urgency, we feel the pressure. I think we're all highly conscious of the dramatic challenges ahead, but the message is really a message of trust, of friendship, and of mobilization. And of course, it rests on our side the action from AFD for the last 15 years in the country. So I think it created, yes, this trust and friendship with us. And we will certainly be very attentive on the way this forum between practitioners, professionals of the financial sector here in Mumbai is gaining ground, and if acceptable, of course, invite other international partners willing to support, or willing to learn from it, or willing to exchange best practices. And I close by saying that I will be in Delhi on Wednesday, and of course we all turn to the G20 presidency, Indian presidency. This was maybe the other reason I'm here the first week of the presidency, again to express the support of France and our willingness to contribute very actively to the priorities set by the presidency. And we heard from many authorities in the room, including the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance of the Indian Parliament, that sustainable finance in both dimensions, meaning international solidarity. So you know all the discussions in Egypt about the 100 billion from Copenhagen, now the loss and damage dimension that we added to the discussion, and we certainly need to unlock way more international finance investments. President Macron, my president, invited to a summit on international finance by June, certainly close cooperation with the Indian presidency, but it's not only international solidarity investments, it's also domestic resource mobilization, it's also the transformation of the financial system in each and every country in the world if we want to unlock the trillions of investment that are here already, but that need to be of the required quality, that have to turn green. And for that we need the infrastructure, we need the certification, we need a system that avoids greenwashing and certify that we are doing the right investments. So again, I think this GIFS initiative, thanks to both of you, is really the movement of the Indian financial sector and think tanks and academic, all those that want to go in the best possible direction, with international partners, of course, learning from it and paying attention and willing to invest in the Indian experience and presidency. Thanks a lot.
My name is Koel Mandal. I am with the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. So we are a philanthropic foundation based out of New Delhi. We work primarily with the think tank ecosystem in India, the climate think tank ecosystem, to advance climate action. And I will mainly talk about the need and urgency for this joint initiative, the Green India Financial System. So as you will know, our Honorable Prime Minister at last COP26, the Chief of Parties COP26 at UNFCCC, made this announcement that India will become net zero emissions by 2070. And he was quite categorical when he said that India's climate objectives will be aligned with our development objectives. And a number of studies that we have supported really demonstrate this fact. You know, this energy economic transition that we are talking about will lead to more clean jobs, around 40 to 45 million more jobs by 2050, higher GDP by 3 to 5 percentage points by 2050, as well as better quality of life, clean air, better health outcomes, all of that. I think the real question now is, how do we get the upfront investments required for this kind of transition? And the numbers that we have heard in the conference today, they range anywhere between $150 to $200 billion per year. And if you look at the latest numbers, India currently, we have around $45 billion per year coming into green investments. So the deficit is quite large. And this is where I think the importance of this kind of initiative comes into play. How do we bring in this additional climate finance into India to meet our energy and economic transition? And while international banks, international climate finance, private finance will have an important role to play, right now if you look at the scale of their finance, it's not much. And one of the main reasons for that is we need to make our financial system, the domestic financial system, more resilient and conducive to climate investments. And I think that in a nutshell captures our initiative. We are trying to through this joint initiative with France, with EU, really create a platform where we can exchange knowledge. Of course, countries like France and EU as a whole, they are far more advanced in a lot of these topics, such as approaches to sustainable investment, taxonomy and others. But India also has its unique characteristics. And this platform therefore gives an opportunity to create very customized, fit-for-purpose solutions for India. And I think we mentioned that this is the third conference in a row in this year. What, in addition to knowledge exchange, practitioners, policymakers coming together, what this initiative has also done is very targeted capacity building. And going ahead, this is one thing we want to focus on, because while we understand the need for greening the Indian financial system, I think we heard time and again across all three seminars, first in India, online seminar, then in Paris now today, that we need capacity. First, we need awareness among our financial institutions. Second, we need capacity. Capacity in terms of understanding what these climate risks for financial institutions are, what are the tools to assess and integrate those risks, and finally, how do we measure and report these risks in a manner that's useful for the financial community. So again, we are very pleased. I'm really thankful to our co-organizers, co-conveners, AFD, Sydney. Tremendous work has gone throughout the year, and we hope to sustain this momentum over the course of the next year as well. We are very pleased to sign the joint declaration. It's just a symbol of our intent to keep working with this initiative, and we really would love to have more participation from the financial community, practitioners, other real economy stakeholders, industry, to come together, give their insights, and really participate in this program.
Yeah, so then I think we're open to questions.
For the benefit of all our journalists here, do you have any kind of projections for the near future, given what has happened in the recent past with the advantages in terms of the kind of finance that will come into the green finance that will come into the system? Can you give us any projections?
So, of course, I appreciate, you're looking for the outcome and the results. And frankly, that's exactly my own approach to life. But the big but is really that how is the credit appraisal going to happen given the kind of risks? So, in green finance, like you have the rating that's done on a pure credit basis, we also now need to start rating on ESG parameters and then start incorporating that within the overall credit rating. A few banks, SBI, Axis Bank, we know, have started this in a very small way given their own internal data. The regulator, SEBI, was there today and has clearly said that there needs to be regulations around what is known as ESG rating. So my own understanding is that once such clarity is in place, we will end up seeing a lot more finance going towards green, and it will be easier to measure it. So today we are just really shooting in the dark. As SIDBI is concerned, just as an example, not that SIDBI is the main financier, SIDBI is just one small financier, but our finance is targeted on the MSME sector. So roughly we do about 13% of the total MSME lending is with SIDBI. But we are going ahead with 1,000 solar rooftops for 1,000 MSMEs. So each MSME should end up having a solar rooftop, which costs roughly about a crore and a half, and that financing we are launching. We have done already, kick-started that as an occasion. We think this is the right occasion to also announce this. Having said that, my point of exemplifying this is internally marked in our system as green finance. So we all need to, as a lender, as a banking system, we all need to do our own internal benchmarks. As Mr. Ravi has clearly said, people would be over enthusiastic. They would end up saying this is also green finance, whereas it would not probably end up measuring as green finance. So the whole standards of what is green financing have to be laid down. These are things which are being worked on by the authorities concerned. Both the RBI is actually, the government of India is working on this. So what is the taxonomy? What is green? What is not green? These are critical questions. But in our own way as banks, I think all of us are already on the path. So it's very difficult to give an answer to that question. So 125 trillion is what is put out by the banking system in the country today. Out of that 125 trillion, how much actually counts as green is very difficult to assess.
If you were to put your, sorry, go ahead sometimes.
No, I wanted to stress and highlight the world of the contribution of public development banks. I mean, it's no surprise SIDBI took this initiative. Of course, it's the leadership of CEO Raman, but it's also because SIDBI has a special role in the financial system of India. I mean, has a special awareness of the needs of SMEs, the needs of the poorest, of the needs of remote territories, probably that are underserved by the financial system. And so certainly we feel the urgency and the way for all of us to mobilize. And I'm here not only as the CEO of AFD, but I chair a club called IDFC SIDBI is the Indian member of. And we launched 3 years ago a movement that is called Finance in Common, that gathers all the public banks in the world. And nobody knew that there are more than 520 public banks in the world. When you add the financial firepower of all these institutions, it amounts to about 2.5 trillion US dollar. Meaning about 15% of total investments, public and private, each year. So imagine our shareholders ask all these institutions to align with the Paris Agreement, to turn green. And then imagine all of us, we do what SIDBI is doing today, inviting all the other stakeholders, including corporate, Tata Power was there, and try to help accompany these other institutions in their own transformation. That is at scale. And of course, you can imagine some sort of global and seamless architecture connecting the global public development banks to those that are able to originate quality projects and to provide the goods and services for the last mile. And so to try to answer your question, you know, there are a lot of discussion right now about international cooperation, reform of multilateral development banks, so including their risk framework, so that they are able to unlock way more concessional resources than they are today. If so, I mean, let's consider also their peers in the countries that could be, not exclusively, but could be recipient of these investments, and whose function in the system should be, well, to originate these renewable, projects for sustainable agriculture. I mean, all public banks are doing forever, but sometimes with not enough resources. So hopefully next year, this discussion that has started already within the G20, and that is now urgent. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, pushed very hard for it, could crystallize and for the benefit of the transition.
You've been part of many international conferences and agreements. You are also the chief negotiator at the Paris conference. So, if you were to put your finger on 3 strong takeaways of today's conference, what would that be?
I would say a case study. So we are providing to international governance a case study of how a very highly significant economy is moving forward. So certainly of interest for all other G20 countries that are somehow but from a different starting point and with different modalities following the same route. I keep also from the discussion this call for the open architecture. So I would say case study, I would say open architecture. Again, if we want to be at scale, we need to avoid too fragmented a global financial architecture. So that was what the Green Climate Fund. You remember this instrument that was created also within the climate negotiation 10 years ago is about. I mean, giving access to as many credible financial institutions as possible, and providing could be equity, could be guarantee, could be grant, could be concessional resources. I mean, the type of financing they need to accelerate their contribution to the fight against climate change. So there's a lot of criticism around the green climate change, but I defend this instrument, especially because of the vision that stands behind. I think that we need. So the chairman of the standing committee was talking about the need for a fund of funds, you know, that would mobilize Indian institutions, French institutions. Certainly we have this, but it's still at too small a size for the if we really want to invest massively in green transition.
How important do you think is private capital and risk capital to the development of this in India?
Well, maybe as I said, the public investments are about 15%, so meaning 85% of it is private. So it's of course absolutely crucial to provide the proper de-risking instruments, regulatory framework. The central banks and regulators are crucial also in this regard, and taxonomies and disclosure rules, so that what the private sector is providing can be measured. And we need more data also to put as many data as possible in the market, so that the quality of the investments improves. And I got the feeling from the discussion today that yes, the Indian private sector is taking that into consideration, at least those you invited. And we certainly feel the same in France. So they see the regulation framework strengthening. They also now measure more and more frequently the physical and the transition risks attached to climate change. There will be stranded assets. There will be huge turbulence for the markets if we do not do it soon enough. So no, it's crucial. But at the same time, I want to insist that we need to allocate public resources and public attention to transform private finance. But we also have to keep resources to finance what nobody will finance, what nobody is financing or what nobody will finance. It's probably wrong to say that private finance will do it all for adaptation to climate change. So again, this is where we need guidance from our leaders for the best possible allocation between financing what nobody is financing and de-risking the private sector. And the problem is we have no clarity on this for now. And if it comes from the discussion here between the Indian public development banks and financial sector with its own government, that's most welcome.
So I'll just add to that. So the traditional banking sector will find it difficult to stretch itself beyond the risk limits that have already been laid out. So two things will happen. One, development institutions, and as Remy correctly said, it's backed by government. They will need to take that additional risk and go into those today's risky areas, make it happen, and then the private capital will follow. And that has been the model of development ever since the beginning. So, you will end up having a lot of venture, private equity, institutional capital, that is really from even philanthropic capital, that will come in. It's already there, it's on the margins, and as he said, we've invited people from that sector in our lunch meeting and the panel today. So we cannot expect the flood to come in from that area. The money lies there, but I think development financial institutions, international financial institutions will have to show the way with guidance from the government. And regulations will also need to therefore change along the way so that the banking system expands its ability to assess risk.
I'll give you one concrete example, which is also one of India's big success stories, the renewable energy sector. Right? So if you look at the last 2-3 years, we received somewhere around investments close to the tune of $18 to $20 billion last 2 years in renewable energy. If you look at solar, for example, when we first started 2009-10, it was around 20-22 kilowatt per hour rupees solar. First, Government of India came out with feed-in tariff, and it was at that scale, 20-21 rupees per kilowatt hour. Then it's a series of policy innovation that resulted in this decline of price and therefore private investments coming in. Second was the reverse auction. That was a phenomenal policy innovation in that sense. Then we came up with this Solar Exchange Commission, the SECI, which started giving guarantees for your payments. Off-taker risk was a big risk for the private sector to invest in the solar projects. So I think these are the kind of instruments that you were alluding to that will unlock private sector capital. And our whole conference was around that. How do you unlock that capital? And what we spoke about, the approaches and tools to make that happen, to align your investments to sustainability, the integration of climate risk in the financial system. Those are all tools to unlock private sector.
I have one more question. How do you prevent
Getting an audit of the green investment, or anyone who claims to have so much green in their balance sheet probably subjected to some sort of an independent audit. So that is really how it has been seen, but I think Remy would probably be more aware of what's happening in Europe, because they're really leaders in this.
No, in Europe we define the taxonomy now on what is green or not. There are several initiatives on climate-related disclosure. So there's a TCFD initiative, you have another one on biodiversity and nature. And I understand from the discussion we had with Mr. Singh of SEBI that India started back in 2012 imposing, because it was not voluntary in India. He told us it was way more efficient to make it mandatory for listed 200 and 500 listed companies to report on ESG, 1,000 today to report on ESG. And you, of course, it's not necessarily reduced to climate. you know, climate comes first because of the urgency, because it's so high on the agenda, but it's also a way when you deal with climate, you find social consequences immediately. So all our institutions, they are in the process of aligning not only with the Paris Agreement, but also with SDGs. That's the next step, and be accountable to it in terms of reducing inequalities, in terms of gender balance, in terms of actually we launched also today a very nice network of women specialized experts in sustainable finance. That certainly will also have its contribution to the work that is ongoing between our two countries.
You gave the example of solar rooftops as part of green finance. Any other more specific examples of this nature that you could share with us?
No, in fact, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been running what's known as an energy efficiency funding, where any MSME that gets into any type of energy efficiency, starting from just replacement of the light bulb, from the sort of tungsten base to an LED, to moving into better machinery, which is rated. So we have the experience of carrying, I think about USD 1.5 billion has already been put out to a variety of MSMEs to get them to move ahead. So all these kinds of initiatives would fall within what is typically termed as green finance. And the finance also goes, at least in the initial stages, it goes with a sort of a small incentive. So if market is 7%, you give it at probably 6.5%.
And of course, the AFD Bruno Bollet team here is at your disposal if you want to know about our own portfolio in the country. That is providing more than 80% climate co-benefits. So we have very clear signature in the country to search for climate results. One of maybe the key investments we did is metro lines in Kochi and in I think 5 or 6 other cities, Bangalore. So well, Bruno, he knows, he can explain. But we certainly are searching for evidence and demonstration that the transition is possible at scale in this regard.
Metro lines in Kochi and Bangalore, you said that earlier, right?
Ahmedabad, Surat, Kochi, Bangalore, Nagpur.
We worked with Ireda, we are working on in Rajasthan on biodiversity and sustainable agriculture, reforestation. So quite a large portfolio of about 4 billion now in India for the last 15 years. Public and 3 billion public, 1 billion private. That we are extremely satisfied with. Of course, we will not be there to take another step in the partnership.
Towards its climate and economic development. Number of domestic initiatives to raise the much needed capital required for the economic and energy transition. On the regulator side, capital markets, we have seen SEBI come up with norms for rating and disclosure from companies. On the Reserve Bank of India's side, we have recently seen a discussion paper that talks about integration of climate risks into the financial system of India. We have also heard the Finance Minister of India announce green bonds worth around 160 billion Indian rupees. So all of these are initiatives in the right direction. And this platform that we are part of today, the Green India Financial System, together with AFD, SIDBI and the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. It's an initiative to really green the Indian financial system, to make sure that climate risks are being integrated in the Indian financial system. There is more alignment of investments to sustainability principles. There is more assessment and integration of risks and disclosure. Today was the third event in the series. We started beginning of this year. Then we had a technical workshop in Paris in June, and this was the final and conclusive event of the year. What this event has done is brought together experts, practitioners from France, India, EU. It's led to tremendous amount of knowledge sharing and a lot of capacity building among Indian stakeholders, and a lot of fit for India kind of solutions will emerge from this initiative. We are really glad to sort of take this initiative forward to next year as well, and we invite a number of other practitioners from the finance sector as well as the real economy sector, industries and other players to come forward and join us in this initiative. Thank you.
I want to thank Shakti and Sidbi for this hard work all year long. It's a great honor for France and for AFD to participate this collective effort of the financial sector here in India as a whole, in all its components, from the central bank, the regulators, to the public banks, the private investors, the commercial banks, rallying behind the cause of sustainability. So we're here, of course, to support and to share our experience in France, in Europe, but also in the 130 countries AFD, the French Development Agency, the French International Public Development Banks is working on similar issues. So I hope that this initiative, this GIFS Green Indian Financial Sector Platform, will move forward, gain ground in 2023 and afterwards, probably providing more and more services to its various components. Could be capacity building, could be becoming some sort of marketplace, or helping new methodologies and frameworks to emerge and be recognized as market standards here on the Indian market.
The greening of the Indian financial system has an important objective going forward. We have to make sure that India lives up to its commitments which the Honorable Prime Minister has set before us. As Sidbi, we are very happy that we've got partners like AFD and Shakti to help carry forward this platform. Capacity building for the Indian MSMEs and capacity building for the Indian financiers is one of the very important objectives going forward. And once the risk frameworks are in place with the help of the regulators, we will find finance coming into the Indian economy. This finance needs to be directed towards green development, and that is really the aim of this entire conference. It is going to be sustained over the years because the need for green finance and green development is here to stay. So this is a small beginning towards a very responsible future that we all have to commit to the planet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.